Yo, what's going on, guys? Mike from Mike Talk Sports. So, Derek Carr just had his first interview with the New York Jets and Robert Saleh. Allegedly, it went really well, and Robert Saleh and Derek Carr absolutely hit it off. Can Derek Carr save the New York Jets? Let me tell you why this answer is not a yes or no answer and why it deserves a little bit of more nuance, which is why I'm going to dive into it in today's video. So Derek Carr is going to be 32 years old at the start of the NFL season in 2023. He's coming off of, honestly, his worst year since his rookie year. So really, since he's been in his prime, it was definitely his worst year last year. So in terms of QB rating, completion percentage, and PFF passing grade, again, it was his worst in all of those categories. Since his rookie years, he was tied for a career high in interceptions, and last year was his career high in interception percentage. Now, getting into Derek Carr and his struggles last year, first off, talking about his coach, in Josh McDaniels, that was never a good schematic fit between the two. The Josh McDaniels system is very inside zone run heavy. It's established the run game, which is why you saw Josh Jacobs have a career year. And then off of that inside zone, you're going to have some mesh concepts, you're going to have some stick concepts, and just some concepts that are indicative of the ball getting out of the quarterback's hands extremely quickly. And that's something that's always been a weakness of Derek Carr, even dating back to his college days. His processor was never the best. Derek Carr, even though he doesn't have the physical ability and talent of a Josh Allen, his play style is kind of that backyard football. He's going to hold on to the ball for longer than the average quarterback is. He's going to hold the ball longer than a Tom Brady, a Mac Jones, hell, a Jarrett Stidham, which is why you saw Jarrett Stidham have some really good games at the end of the last year. Derek Carr was just never a great fit with Josh McDaniels and that system. Going into Nathaniel Hackett and the potential fit with the Jets, I see some similar issues. Now, Josh McDaniels' offense and Nathaniel Hackett's offense are different. They come from different philosophies. Nathaniel Hackett is more of that Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, the LaFleur coaching tree, a little bit with McVay mixed in there as well. But the Nathaniel Hackett coaching system is, again, get the ball out of your hands quickly. Instead of that inside zone run, it's that outside zone run, very outside zone run heavy. And then off of that, you're going to run a lot of mesh concepts as well. You're going to run slants. You're going to run routes in the flat to get the ball in the playmaker's hands, which schematically with these Jets offensive players, with guys like Breece Hall, with guys like Garrett Wilson, that's a good fit. It does make me a little bit nervous about the fit with Derek Carr. I have no idea why the Jets signed Nathaniel Hackett. It makes no sense. He did not prove to be a good offensive coach with the Broncos. I think he was very questionable with the Packers as well. Aaron Rodgers is a guy who always complains about the LaFleur system. He doesn't like it, and then they go out and sign a LaFleur protege. Now, I know Aaron Rodgers has said he likes Nathaniel Hackett, but in my opinion, he likes Nathaniel Hackett on a personal level, not a schematic level. So I don't really get the Nathaniel Hackett hiring, and I don't think it would be a good pair with Derek Carr. But nonetheless, guys, can Derek Carr save the Jets? Short answer, yes. Why do I think Derek Carr can save the Jets? First off, I just alluded to he had a bad year last year. Now, I think for the most part, he just had like 4 bad games. I think the rest of that season, he was Derek Carr. He was normal Derek Carr. You look at quarterbacks once they get into their 30s and their statistical kind of stats drop off, and you look at, their physical ability just dropped off. You look last year with Russell Wilson, for example, I think the mental processor was absolutely exposed, but I also think physically, from a physical talent perspective, he wasn't all the way there. With Derek Carr, this isn't really the case. It seems as though his mobility is as good as it's ever been. His arm strength and arm talent is just about on par with how it's always been. And then the processor, you look at games like New England, for example. I think this is a great example of what I'm trying to talk about. So New England versus Las Vegas last year, there was a couple plays. They had a pick 6 on a screen route. There was just a couple bad Derek Carr plays where I go, okay, this was Josh McDaniels saying, make this read. This is a 2-read option play. You're going to get the ball and you're going to make a predetermined read, and it ended up intercepted. It ended up as a bad grade passing-wise for PFF. And to me, that's more of a McDaniels coaching tree thing rather than it is a Derek Carr. Derek Carr just doesn't have the best pre-snap read processor. He's not really good at going to the line of scrimmage, making his checks, and making sure that the specific zone coverage or the specific defensive look he's getting is the look he's actually going to get. He's more of a reactionary quarterback. He's more of that guy who's going to say, okay, I'm going to make this play based on my instincts. And that's not something he did in Las Vegas last year. And I think that's something he can get back to with the Jets. But again, going into last year, you're going to be able to sign him for somewhat of a bargain price if you're the Jets. Now, when I say bargain, I'm not talking about like anything south of $30 million. I think they sign him north of $30 million. So I'm not going to act like they're getting him for dirt cheap, but you're not going to get him for 40, 45, 50 mil, which I think is a great positive. It still gives your organization wiggle room to work with this roster. So getting into the Jets last season, they went 5-4 with Zach Wilson. They went 1-3 with Mike White, and then they went 1-3 with Joe Flacco. Very bad quarterback play. They had their best record with Zach Wilson, but something I want to explain to Jets fans and other NFL fans, you can't just insert a quarterback who's better than your other quarterbacks and assume your team's going to get better. And I think a great example of this was the Jets last year. I was talking to my Jets fan friend, and he was rambling about how better Mike White was than Zach Wilson. And I don't disagree that Mike White is better than Zach Wilson, and he played better than Zach Wilson last year. But again, Zach Wilson went 5-4 last year as a starter, and Mike White went 1-3. Better quarterback play doesn't necessarily signify more wins on the win column. It's all about the situation. So just because you insert Derek Carr into your system doesn't mean you're going to have a better team than you had last year. But I do think in a 17-game stretch that Derek Carr is going to be able to bring this team to more wins. Getting into the Jets' 2023 opponents outside of the AFC East, of course, you're going to play the Commanders, the Eagles, the Falcons, the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Texans, the Cowboys, the Giants, the Broncos, the Browns, and the Raiders. Guys, that's a really, really tough schedule. I'll be completely honest. I think that's a tougher schedule than you had last year. You had a bit of a Mickey Mouse schedule in the first 10 games. So I'm a little bit nervous, guys. I think the Jets' path to victory this year is going to be tougher than it was last year. So Derek Carr is going to have to play noticeably better than Zach Wilson, than Mike White, than Joe Flacco, which again, I think he's going to do. Do I think you guys win 4 or 5 more games with Derek Carr? I honestly don't, but I think you guys can win 2 more games with Derek Carr and make the playoffs. So that's why, to me, the short answer is yes. He can save the Jets. If you can get a quarterback in there for the next 4 years to turn your franchise into a very respectable one, a team that year in and year out has a really good defense, has good playmakers, has solid quarterback play, has good coaching, has stable coaching on the offensive side of the ball, which I think is going to be so significant. That's the biggest storyline for the Jets. I thought the biggest storyline going in the last 2 years was honestly Mike LaFleur and the failure he was as the offensive coordinator. We're going to look at Nathaniel Hackett and see how he is. If Nathaniel Hackett isn't good, what is Robert Saleh doing as your offensive head coach, or defensive head coach, What is he doing? The job of a head coach, especially a non-offensive one, is to hire a good staff. A president is as good as his presidential cabinet. A head coach is as good as their coaching staff. Robert Saleh has not been able to hire a good coaching staff so far. I think Robert Saleh is done after this year if Nathaniel Hackett is an utter failure. So it's so vital for this Jets organization to have a guy like Derek Carr come in and make the playoffs for you. And I think the long answer to my question is no. Derek Carr will not save the Jets in terms of Super Bowl rings. But why I think the short answer is yes is because if you can have a 4-year transition period of getting to the divisional round, getting to the wild card, winning a playoff game here or two, and you have these young stars enter their prime in 4 or 5 years. You have Sauce Gardner-Johnson in his mid to late 20s. You have all these guys in their late 20s, early 30s, and you hit that Super Bowl window. You can get rid of Derek Carr in 4 or 5 years and get an elite quarterback in there via the draft, via free agency, via trade. Then yes, that Derek Carr can save the Jets. But again, do I think Derek Carr is going to lead the Jets to a Super Bowl? No, I honestly don't. Getting into the Jets defense for a second, they were 18.6 points per game last year, which is 4th. Rushing yards per game, 121.6, which was 16th. 189.4 passing yards a game, which was 3rd. They were 29th in takeaways with 16. Then they had 45 sacks, which was 7th. The two main stats that are most indicative on defense of helping out your offense is that rushing yards per game and those turnovers, because if your defense is really good at stopping the run, then that means your offense is getting the ball back not only quickly, but with a lot of time left on the clock. You can eat the clock. Possession time is so vital in the NFL. And then turnovers, guys. Turnovers is so vital not only because you get a short field, but because you take away a possession from the other team. Again, giving another possession to your offense. And that's two things not only the Jets defense were outright bad at last year, but Robert Saleh, dating back to his 49ers days. This was always my complaint about Robert Saleh. He plays a somewhat conservative defense in terms of run stopping and in terms of takeaways. He's not going to be overly aggressive with his corners. He's going to allow you to get the underneath, and he's going to stop a team on 3rd down in terms of passing. He has a good front 4 with New York. He had a really good front 4 with the 49ers, so he can generate pressure with 4 and then drop the rest of the guys back in coverage. What I want to see from Robert Saleh's defense is get some more takeaways. You're 29th in takeaways last year. That's an absolute joke. For something that is considered a top 5 defense in the NFL, to be 29th in turnovers, absolute joke. You need to be more aggressive. And then to be 16th in run stopping, you need to be a little bit more aggressive. Send 5, send 6, stop the run, get some turnovers.